Well, now let's begin our agenda, shall we? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace may be upon you. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. First and foremost, praise is to Allah, the Almighty, the greatest of all, on whom we ultimately depend for sustenance and guidance. Secondly, may Allah's blessing be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has been sent to all mankind to improve and perfect the ethical and moral behaviors. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your enthusiasm on this fourth day of our program. Hopefully, all of you can keep your spirit fed up until the last day of this program. Please let me introduce myself first. My name is Fatih, and today I'll be your master of ceremony, and I will guide you all during the lecture. Please be kind upon me, as you will find so many mistakes from me. Thank you very much. And we also would like to thank all the parties who have helped this event to be held, especially to our sponsors Basnas, LAZ Al Bunyan, and BPRS Botani, and also Prudential Sharia. Prudential Sharia is the market leader in the Sharia life insurance industry and the first joint venture company to have spin-off. Prudential Sharia, make it through to your heart. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, our first lecture for today's agenda has already been here. Please welcome Mr. Dimajani. Assalamualaikum, sir.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, for the session, Mr. Dimajani will share with us about the introduction to the Islamic fintech. Mr. Dimajani is founder and CEO of Alami. How do you say that? Alami or Alami? How do you pronounce that, sir?
Alami, yeah.
Alami. Yes. Okay. Alami.
Yeah, Alami.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Alami is a financial startup focusing on SME based on Sharia system. Please correct me if I'm wrong, sir. So we know we got the amazing lecturers and here. So we are very honored to have you with us today. However, sir, I would like to ask you before we start the lecture, would you rather have a Q&A session at the middle of your presentation so the participant can ask you even if it's still in your middle of presentation, or would you rather have a Q&A session at the end of your presentation have finished?
I think you can wait until the end of the presentation.
Okay. So this, as Sir Dima said, you'll be given the opportunity to ask questions to Mr. Dima. If anyone wants to ask Mr. Dima, you can leave your question via the chat room, or you can use the raise hand feature on your screen at the end of the presentation. And also, the presence link will be given in the middle of the lecture. Don't forget to fill it out. Without further ado, please, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin our first lecture. To Mr. Dimajani, the time, the screen, and this meeting is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. The slide will be held by the committee, right? Okay, thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Everyone, thank you for having me as one of the speakers in this prestigious winter course prepared by IPB. So I'm here to share a little bit about our thought on the introduction to financial technology, or as what we call it, fintech. Next slide. We're talking about the evolution of finance, right? I think you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So this is the evolution of finance, and I think what we can see, technology is a vital component when it comes to the financial industry, even since the 17th century. What we see here, like FinTech 1.0, is mostly analog financial services, starting off from telegraph, first transatlantic cable, and the first credit card, right? And After that, we went into the FinTech 2.0. This is essentially the domination of traditional financial services. This is more on the centralized approach on finance by using, people in the 60s trying to simplify a lot of things with technology, as many other industries are actually doing so. So there's a, okay, is it from my end or not? I'm not sure. I think there's a feedback or something. Um, so yeah, people trying to make things more efficient. So that's why technology is introduced in the 60s in the financial industries to simplify a lot of things. Then came the kind of era as we know as we know it as the modern financial institutions, where everything is very much centralized and governed, right? Um, and then we come across the FinTech 3.0, where the essence here is the democratization, the decentralization of financial services, and the new business models that is tech enabled. The definition of tech enabled is essentially where before the element new technology being introduced into run, it will not be also profitable to run. And I guess this is the new invention as we know it, being coined as a fintech, which has like different, I would say, sub verticals inside of it. And I think that obviously the recent fintech would be the cryptos and right, which probably going to be discussed separately. Has always been there with the financial industry. It's just the application that's different, and the model that is different across this timeline. So moving ahead, next slide, please.
Hopefully you can hear me better now. So now, the key differences here with the introduction of, I would say, new technology is obviously on those who otherwise will not be feasible to run, like when it comes to the coverage, when it comes to the target customers. Previously, banks only got into the business with those who have good credit scores that can be, I would say, accessed through the platform that is integrated to the bank itself, right? So alternative data points is not being regarded as one of the indicators to check the creditworthiness, but things change with more data points being introduced. Uh, Collateral. Let me switch my microphone.
Okay, hopefully this is better now. The structure is also more lean. I think less bureaucracy. I think the way to conduct the business is also different with fintech, and obviously the technological alliance as well. So essentially, what differentiates fintech and the traditional FI would be how we use the technology and our mindset. So when people say that, you know, a lot of traditional FIs want to be agile or want to come up with digital banking. I guess the first thing to be improved would be obviously the human capital, because it's just the way people use technology and the approach that is different, because technology is a commodity nowadays. Um, Next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Yeah, I think this is. Yeah, I'm having problem with the sound. Give me 1 second. I'm not sure what happened. I'm just gonna speak a bit louder. Um, FinTech Cube and what we've seen so far. So there's obviously the three by three matrices that we've seen, like when it comes to different product and services, different type of technology, and also the institution, and these three factors can interchangeably used depending on the regulatory environment, depending on the market, right? So what we see in terms of the, I would say, the verticals of fintech, we see like peer-to-peer lending, right? Robo advisory, blockchain technology being used, big data, online payments, the Internet of Things that can be used to disperse loan more efficiently, and obviously the mobile banking, right, to kill all of the OPEX of setting up branches. And obviously the digitalization of public services is usually direct tech. So I think the way people approach technology will be going to be different going forward, and I think this is the what do you call it, the new norms of finance, as what Bill Gates says, uh, banking might not be relevant going forward, but banking is still going to be there. The action will be there. The form might be different going forward. Next slide. Okay, right, there we go. Can we go to the next page? Okay. Recent statistics about fintech. From figure 4 on the right, we're seeing more and more investment activities to fintech companies, and especially in since 2018 and until now 2021, I think the big money coming to the neo-banking or the digital banking verticals across the world. We've seen Europe kind of like drive them in the beginning, and then Latin America starting to soar when it comes to the investment to the digital bank, with the, I would say, pioneer of new bank from Brazil getting listed in the U.S. stock exchange. What was the result from this huge investment is that if we see the figure number one, number of branches in the U.S. comes down on the consistent trend, and the preferred channels for conducting financial transactions is going to be like more digitalized, right? That will shift the customer behavior towards like digital first, as I mean what we know it now. So that's kind of the validation of the trends going forward. Next slide. When we see the size and opportunity of global Islamic fintech, I think it's still in early days. I think based on the Global Islamic Fintech Report 2022, we've seen more than almost 400 Islamic fintechs all around the world, around 80 billion of an industry, and the leading players are some of the Middle Eastern countries, Malaysia, Turkey, and then Indonesia. And the CAGR, the growth is shy of 20%. It's still like early days, and a lot of this market is just started to be open when it comes to fintech. Saudi, Malaysia, as well as Turkey, just started to grow when it comes to the fintech. I think it's been a while there, 2011, but the Islamic ones will probably come up pretty late in 2018, and we can delve more on the Indonesian fintech industry in the Q&A session. Next slide. Um, so this is the global national, I would say, Islamic finance issues. On national issues, when it comes to Indonesia, the penetration remains low. When it comes to Islamic banking industry, it's low, about 6.5% in terms of the penetration. However, when we combine it with the capital markets like Sukuk, obviously the number is much more. I think probably about more than 10%. And yeah, a lot of the businesses are concentrated in Java. The second, I think this will be the main driver of Islamic finance adoption going forward. But as of now, it still remain quite low. On the global issues, obviously we've seen a shift, and also this is international to shift to digital from analog, definitely. And obviously the core of the things that we've been talking about is the sustainable finance, right? So Islamic finance and sustainable finance is essentially very similar. This is where I think the Islamic finance practitioners can take the lead in the, I would say, more wider space to kind of showcase on the sustainability practice. I think this is what Alam is trying to do as well over the last few years. Next stage. Next page, please. So on potential is huge, right? I think it's predicted in 2024, the halal financial industry or Islamic financial industry will go up to 3.2 trillion US dollars. When we're speaking about Indonesian opportunity, we have about 231 million Muslims in Indonesia itself. And when we talk about MSC financing gap, there's around 165 billion US dollars of a gap, right? And banking penetration overall is still 50%. So imagine what or how the digital banking approach can be very big, because the smartphone penetration is probably more than 70% right now. So if you do the math right, I think definitely the future for Indonesia's financial industry would be going through the digital channel, especially on the digital banking side, and even more important for Islamic finance. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Thank you, and we appreciate for the committee to help on changing the slide quicker. So this is the journey of us. We got registered in OJK and starting our P2P lending business back in 2019. In 2020, during COVID, we actually increased significantly when it comes to the disbursement. And in 2021, we acquired an Islamic bank locally, which we transformed into Hijra Bank. And we also come up with our own accelerator program called Arkam and Alami Institute. In 2022, we got the license to launch the mobile banking of Hijra Bank and approval by OJK to launch. And hopefully, inshallah, we're going to launch it by end of this year. What's interesting here is you're seeing a journey from the lending business into a more complete financial solutions that entails banking. So what we're trying to do is a comprehensive financial solution that adheres to the Islamic principles, fueled by technology. Next slide. This is our ecosystem of Alami Group. So we're starting off from the peer-to-peer lending platform, focusing on financial inclusion for the SMEs, and we're expanding into the Sharia-compliant digital bank or Hijra Bank, which we're inshallah going to formally launch at the end of this year. But we're not only focusing on the inclusion side of things, because we feel that literacy is very important, especially in Indonesia, because with high inclusion and low literacy, people can lose their money easily. People can get trapped by a lot of debt from the fintech lending or pinjol as we know it. So improving the literacy is very important. That's why we come up with Arcam Accelerate entrepreneurs to equip themselves with a best next slide, please. Um, this is the our business on the P2P and the Hydro Bank. So we're putting our best effort because we are one of the pioneer when it comes to Islamic fintech. So we really put an effort to have the best user experience for our users. So for the P2P app, you can manage your portfolio. You can clearly see what you're getting and the transparency that entails with it. And for the Hydro Bank app, you can have different saving box to according to your needs. So for Umrah, for Korban, and all of these things. The new features that we come up with is the lifestyle, where we can listen to your favorite stats and what do you call it, do a Q&A with them. Next slide. Uh, Alhamdulillah, we're present in 482 cities across Indonesia and all of the provinces, and we have more than 110,000 people registered in our platform, and we've disbursed close to 3.5 trillion Indonesian rupiah so far with 0% default. Alhamdulillah, also we got an award and mentioned by Forbes top 100 startups to watch in Asia Pacific, as well as Fast Company on the one of the life-changing idea from Asia Pacific, and I think we are the only fintech that is nominated there. And alhamdulillah, we just gotten a GIFA award, Global Islamic Finance Awards, as the most innovative tech companies. Next slide. So this is our all-time financing portfolio. When we're talking about impact, we have a dedicated division to measure our impact internally. So we're looking at these metrics on the positive screening, impact investing, and exclusionary screening. So 29, close to 30% of our portfolio is deemed sustainable. We have 10% of neutral, about 46% of carbon emit, and high carbon about 13%, which we're trying to reduce it over time. The sustainable financing disbursement is now close to 1 trillion of about 18 million US dollars. So these are the split of our portfolio, and within the 29.7%, we see that renewable empowerment of low-income community and fisheries are kind of like the majority of the cost that we are lending into. Next slide. Yeah, this is what we measure as the social impact and economic impact that we create. You see that we're focusing very much in early days for fish farmers. We have more than 1,600 fish farms, and we've partnered up with some of the leading, I would say, startups as institutions when it comes to financing their ecosystems and reach out to the bottom of the pyramid. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a little bit of snippets from Archon Accelerator. The impact from first batch is that we've reached out of 3,000 Muslim entrepreneurs that is joining our program with 40 mentors from 20 communities. What we see is that the biggest detriment for a small enterprise is definitely the financing, the mentorship, and also the business skills. These are the things that we focus on our camp. Next slide. Uh, just quickly here, I think this is what Al-Amin Institute is focusing on, is to improve the Islamic financial literacy, the index and the conventional finance literacy index of 38%. So we're trying to improve this with a engaging and fun method for the market. Next. Next. Yeah, this is the impact initiatives. I think we have like impact program with some of our impact partners to go through the bottom of the pyramid, not really on the financing part, but more on the social finance part, like sadaqah and helping others. So these are some of the stats for this. Next slide. Yeah, so these are the continuation of the impact initiatives. I think during COVID time, we designed an ambulance and donated to Dompet Duafa. Alhamdulillah, the ambulance has been used to help people, and we're also helping the Warung Mustahik for our routine Friday Sadaqah among our internal team, and partnering with Kitabisa on helping some of the orphanages in Indonesia, as well as with Dompet Duafa on wakaf for a well, water well. Next slide, and then this is the final slide. Then the hub to move to the next slide. Thank you. So what's next for us in terms of social finance? First is the donation. We're gonna gamify the donation going forward. We're gonna install Zakat calculator, sacrifice, and obviously we're gonna explore more about going forward. I think this is the final slide. Thank you very much, and happy to.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dimajani. What you have thought about the introduction to the Islamic fintech has been very enlightening and insightful for all of us. Now, let's get going to our Q&A session, shall we, sir? So, participant, you can leave your question via the chat room, or you can use the raise hand feature on your screen, and then our host will allow you to ask to Mr. Dima directly. It can be questions related to what he delivered today, or questions related to his area of expertise. I hope this information is clear enough. So, Mr. Dima, shall we take it one by one or three at a time for the questions and answer?
One by one will be great. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So, is there anyone want to ask about the thing, the introduction to the Islamic fintech? You can either raise your hand or use the chat room. Okay, maybe we need a little time to wait. I'm gonna ask again. Is there anyone want to ask something to Mr. Dima? You can either use the raise hand feature or leave the question in the chat room.
I think if there's no questions, happy to answer any questions separately.
Yes, sir. Your voice is kinda. I can't hear you clearly.
Hello. Yeah. If there's if there's no
Yes.
questions, we can I can answer any questions separately as well.
Okay. So the participant can ask about anything, right, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the participant can ask about anything you want. So you can either leave a question in the chat room or raise your hand. Oh yeah. So we got something in the chat room from Nurfala Safitri. She asked, Alami Sharia is one of the startup. Do you do a strategy like other startup that is burn money? Is it Alami Sharia has produced profit? So that's the question, sir.
Yeah. So I think the definition of burning money is quite ambiguous, because it kind of consists a lot of how to say, so as a startups, we do obviously we're loss making at the beginning because we need to, especially on the fintech, right? There's a compliance costs and the cost of creating the products and technology that's pretty big in the beginning. So obviously that we're doing all of those stuff like in the beginning, but gradually as the revenue grows and the costs keep on stagnant, that we're reducing our loss going forward. So inshallah, I think we're near the profitability, and as we scale, we expect that we're going to get profit from the paper lending side. I think as we embark into new business activities such as banking, obviously we do a lot of investment in the beginning, but essentially as banking is a profitable business, we expect to be profitable quite soon as we have a strong differentiation in the market. So I hope that answered your question. I think the MC is on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. So I hope that answer your question. So there's another question for Mr. Modo from Group 25. So the host, please unmute Mr. Modo.
Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, thank you very much. Doctor, sir, how can I address you, doctor or Mister?
It's okay, up to you.
Okay, Dr. Dami, thank you very much for your enlightening and insightful presentation. I'm actually one of those who are interested in fintech. It's a very great interest in me. So you did mention during your presentation that financial inclusive or inclusion, sorry, very important. But without awareness, people can easily lose their monies and get into unnecessary loan. So a young person like me who is aspiring to maybe have a startup in my own country, in the Gambia, Africa, what is your advice for me? Because the literacy level of fintech back home is very low. So what is your advice for someone like me? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions, Modo, and yeah, I pray that you have a success in your future endeavor. So I think learning from our experience, you should do parallel approach when educating the market. One is the traditional one where you do marketing, but the way you do marketing should be I would say more modern, because nowadays when you educate people on financials, it want to be very close with the lifestyle. So, for example, in Indonesia, when there's a lot of investment influencers, which speak in a language that the market understands rather than very technical stuff. So that's the things that you might want to work together with local influencers in your market. Another thing is educating by coming up with a good product. So your product should be able to nudge user behavior to the way that you want them to be, which inshallah is the best one. So just giving you an example, a lot of people in Indonesia, even though they're Muslims, I think when they do the lending for the different akad or different structures. So, for example, murabaha, right? Murabaha, it's a cost plus approach. So you get a profit which is going to be repaid in installments. So upon late payment, that profit wouldn't change, right? You just need to be patient to collect that profit. But the urf or the habit here is because driven from conventional finance, whenever there's late payment, people usually ask for additional fee or get with our platform by the education, by having the customer service ready and educate them. So for almost a year, we're educating our funders, and now, alhamdulillah, they understand if they go to Alami, they will not receive like any additional profit, kind of like one way to educate them. So inshallah, this could be implemented according to your market, uh, market condition. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Now let's go to the next question, sir, from Luliatul Mutmainah. Thank you for your great explanation about the Sharia fintech growth. I am Luli. Would you like to share what is your expectation for your younger generation about the development of Sharia fintech, especially in Indonesia? How is the impact of the technology development to break the barriers?
Um, thank you. I think I would encourage the younger generation to get the best practice, because the problem with the Islamic fintech or Islamic finance industry, a lot of the manpowers doesn't get the best practice from the tech world, from the financial world. So they come directly to the without like proper learning, without the proper best practice. So it's important for the younger generation to get the best practice first, so that you can build a global best practice Islamic fintech going forward, right? If you don't know what the best practice is, it's very difficult to benchmark yourself against the lending club of the world, the Sophie of the world, the Klarna of the world, right? So I guess that's what's important. And I guess my message for the older generation is to, for those of you who understand that, please pass it on to the younger generation. So there's a transfer of knowledge, and there's a better, I would say, generation that can come after us to really move forward, break down all the tore down the wall, and so that the Islamic fintech can be obviously better than just the conventional fintech industry. That's my encouragement to the younger generation.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Mr. Dima. Now we got another, I don't know, maybe there's a question from Mumu Muhammad. He said, can you share with us regarding raising capital you did previously? Maybe he wants to know more about the raising capital you did. Is that right,
Yeah.
Mr. Mumu? Yeah, I guess that's right.
Okay, thanks. A lot of sharing here, so I guess I'll just keep it short. I think it's always a challenge to raise capital, because you're not only focusing on the money, but what type of investor that you want to have in your cap table. especially those who can appreciate the principles of Islamic finance. That's very important. So not many investors understand this by default. So you need to do your homework to educate them as well with a language that they can understand. So eventually they would be able to appreciate that. And you need to obviously show traction, because investors at the end of the day, they want to look at the business side of things. So if the Sharia element wouldn't be able to justify the different business model that you have, or like competitive advantage that you have vis-a-vis the non-Sharia business model, then investors wouldn't like it, definitely, because they don't understand this. They see a lot of risk in this. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. But Alhamdulillah, we have raised from some of the prominent VCs in the market in this region, and also globally. So this is the continuous exchange of information that I do with our investor base to educate them about the potential and the beauty of Islamic finance. So I think that's what all I can say in this short notice.
Okay, thank you again for Mr. Dima for the answer, and to Mr. Momo for the questions. Can we still go on, sir? Mr. Dima?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. For the next question from Nurul Hudaya. Assalamualaikum, Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much in advance for sharing your knowledge. I want to ask a question. Earlier in the slide, there was an explanation that 30% of natural Sharia business are sustainable business and some are natural. Can you explain what business neutral is and how to distinguish a business is included in a sustainable program or not?
Yeah. It depends on the per company, right? Like we come up with our own definition. So we're looking at the impact, especially on the carbon emittance. So for example, when it comes to like coal, so that's kind of like high carbon business that we include that upon. There's a low carbon and probably some things around logistics, and then carbon neutral would be probably be something that doesn't entail the carbon emittance from that particular business. And the sustainable would be one that is actually helpful for the impact. So we have a definition, for example, for farmers, for like depending on the impact that we set, right? Like so, helping the outsourcing companies on creating jobs as well is considered there. You can download our impact report in our website, and it has a more granular explanation about what we consider to be the sustainable business according to our house view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dima, for another great answers, and thank you for Ms. Nurul for the questions. There's another question in the chat room from Irina from the group P4. So the biggest challenge for Islamic fintech is how to regulate fintech so it doesn't act like new kind of rentier. How do the method of Islamic fintech to answer this challenge? And is there any specific regulation about the data security of its user in Islamic fintech? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's back to the co-founders, and it's back to the business model that they want to entail, right? So, for example, what we call the rentier is definitely someone who obviously charge a high interest, so that the borrower is kind of like in prison and cannot grow, right? So obviously, I think there's a lot of people that use the Islamic principles and also doing this. So it really depends on the business strategy. What we see is that we, in Alami specifically, we don't want to encourage consumerism. That's why we never come up with the BNPL strategy, for example, or BNPL product. And we don't do KTA or like a cash loan. We're focusing on productive lending to help entrepreneurs to go up the value chain. The method of Islamic fintech is really back to the principles, right? So whether the founders is following the principles or it's just the structures or the akad to make them compliant. So it's different. So that's, I guess, connect to some of other questions that what makes Alami different from other fintech. I guess the intention is different. Obviously, as a business, we want to grow and big, but obviously as a focusing on the Islamic finance or Islamic principles, we want to be helpful and beneficial for others. That's why we're focusing on fintech. That's why we go to rural areas by way of partnering with other ecosystem to provide loan to the smallholders. So that's kind of what differentiate us, and we want to be mindful on our pricing as well, to be competitive and helpful to our borrowers. In terms of the data security, it's not specific to Islamic fintech, but in the peer-to-peer lending industry in Indonesia, there's a specification or requirements by the OJK to come up with the ISO standard on the data security, ISO 27001. And we also do that for our bank. So we want to be very prudent when it comes to our data security.
Okay, thank you. Shall we go to another question, sir?
Yes.
Okay, from Rida Rosida, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Dima. Could you please elaborate more on cash walk-off and Islamic social finance practice that have been done by Islamic fintech here in Indonesia and abroad? What is the challenges faced by the Islamic fintech, especially in terms on human resources? Thank you.
Okay, we are still exploring that. We have discussion with our Sharia committee, and we're gonna share more as we get more clarity on that. I think in terms of the best practice for fintech, Islamic fintech on the social finance, I think Brother Umar will be best explaining that, as his business is focusing on that. But what I can share from Alami's perspective is that we're trying to integrate the commercial and social elements on our business model. Right? So when going forward, when you do transaction with Hijrah Bank, there will be some element that will be put sadaqah under your consent. Right? So every time you do transaction, it's that every time you provide sadaqah for those in needs, and we're gonna record that, and we're gonna provide the reports back to you, so you can do financial transaction while helping others. So that's one of the way to integrate both commercial and social under one, I would say, platform. That's what we're trying to do. One example would be that. And challenge faced by in terms of human resources, it's very hard. I'm not talking about fintech in particular, but even the digital banking industry, it's very hard, or fintech, because as you grow bigger, you need to put more costs on compliance. You need to be more sensible and understanding about working with regulator. You cannot be as free as e-commerce or other non-financial sector, because financials is a heavily regulated industry. So the specific mindset would be not easy to find. I think the best talent would be someone who's worked at banking, understand the risk and credit risk and the way banks do their things, and then understand about Islamic as well, and then move to a startup like the e-commerce or ride hailing or whatever, and then come into this, come up with the Islamic fintech. So that will be the complete set of founders, I would imagine. Other than that, it takes time to understand all of these three aspects. So yeah, it's not easy. Definitely on the Islamic, you need to have understanding about the Islamic principles as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dima, for another great answer. And to the next question from Megaria. Mr. Dima, thank you very much for the course. I enjoyed every minute of your lecture. I want to ask a question. What makes Alami different from the other fintechs, sir? Thank you.
I already explained this now. I think the intention and the focus on impact, that will differentiate us with other fintech. Can move to next question, Mr. MC.
Okay. Next question is from Ms. Septian Adityawati. Dear Mr. Dima, thanks for your presentation. I want to ask, there are three questions here. The first one is, what's MSME sectors Alamis provide financing until today? The second one is, what are the most implications of Alamis financing for MSMEs in Indonesia? And the third one is, has Alami reached farmers in rural areas? Thanks.
Okay. As we reach farmers in rural areas, yes, through our partners. The implication of Alamis financing, it enabled them to access for source of capital to help their business floating, because a lot of MSMEs are unbanked. So typically they're using friends' money or their own equity to finance their working capital. Now with us, they'll be able to finance through us. And the sectors are varied. I think some of the sectors is creative, logistics, FMCG, agribusiness, aquaculture, what else? Healthcare. Thank you.
Okay, there's last question here from Mr. Abdul Rahim Abdul Wahid Yusuf. Thanks for the first question, sir. My question is on how to incorporate cryptocurrency trading in Islamic fintech.
I think it really depends on the jurisdiction and the strategy, right? I mean, you can always incorporate that. But for example, in Indonesia, for licensed financial institutions, including fintech, we're not allowed to do crypto, for example, but other trading, whether it's aligned with the principle of Islamic finance, which is to distribute the wealth through the real economy, right? Because a lot of the trading is based on speculation. So I think this is something that I think the founders and the scholars need to decide, because some area the scholars put even the whole crypto is haram. Some scholars would say it's allowed based on several premises that might connect to kind of underlying assets and all of this stuff. So we're still looking at these sectors as well. Definitely the blockchain technology is super helpful going forward when the adoption can be has allowed me want to learn more, and at this point I'm trying to avoid, but we're trying to find more use cases when it comes to crypto. So stablecoin for donation, and for like something that is pretty far off from my serve. So that I think that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dima. So I think that's it for the Q&A session. Or should I ask for another question? Maybe, is there any question left? If no, let's just end it here. Well, okay then. Thank you for your answer, sir. I believe what have been explained by Mr. Dima has answered all the questions pretty clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I think that's all for Q&A session for the first lecture. Unfortunately, we are going to go to the next session. So I would like to ask you to stay on your screen, sir, because we have a small token of our precision for you. Please accept it with our sincere thanks to the operator. Please show us the certificate. Okay, now this is a certificate for you, sir, for the great lecture you taught to us just now. Sir, please accept it as our gratitude. Okay, now we are going to take a picture of us joining this lecture. Now, please give me your best shot. Are you ready, host? I will count it from 3 to 1, so we could do the pause. Are you ready, host? Okay, now give me your best pose. 3, 2, 1. Okay, for another slide. 3, 2, 1. For the next slide, 3, 2, 1. Another slide, 3, 2, 1. Another slide, 3, 2, 1. Or maybe for the last one, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, before we close this session, is there anything else you want to say, sir? Maybe about the assignment of the quiz, or maybe a closing statement from you. That would be nice.
Yeah, thank you. I think I wish you all the best. Definitely. Inshallah, I think all of this knowledge that I shared can be useful for your journey going forward. Thank you very much for attending.
Yeah, thank you as well, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, this is the end of our first lecture from today's agenda. Once again, we would like to express our gratitude to Mr. Dimajani for so generously sharing your valuable time, knowledge, and wisdom for us. We are very fortunate to have listened to what you have explained in your presentation today. May Allah bless you. And we do apologize as you may felt many inconveniences from us throughout the session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to remind you, don't forget that we will still have our second lecture for today by Mr. Umar Munshi, which will begin at 6:30 p.m. Western Indonesia time, or Ba'na Maghrib by Indonesia time. So hopefully all of the participants can return to this virtual room 5 minutes before the start of the second lecture. Wallahu a'lam. Let's close the session by saying alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Doa kafaratul majelis, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, our second grad lecturer is the co-founder, Group MD of Ethics Group of FinTech Startup, right, sir?
Yes.
Yes. We are very honored to have you with us today, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for this session, Mr. Umar Munshi will share with us about the Islamic fintech and its impact on society. However, Mr. Before we continue, please allow me to ask you something. Would you rather have a Q&A session during the presentation so that all the participants could ask you a question even if it's still in the middle of your presentation? Or would you rather have a Q&A session at the end of your presentation, sir?
We can do it as we go. Don't worry.
Okay, so as Mr. Umar said, all participants are allowed to ask questions in the middle of his presentation, right, sir?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. However, to keep the forum in order and conducive, please raise your hand before you ask. Thank you very much. Now, without further ado, let's immediately listen to a presentation from our great lecturer, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Mr. Umar Munshi. To Mr. Umar, the screen, the time, and this meeting is yours, sir.
All right. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, before that, of course, I'd like to thank the organizers, everybody involved in this, and of course, IPB itself. Today, I want to do something different. I was supposed to share some slides, but I decided it's better to have something more interactive with all of you, inshallah. So I will not have slides. I have my points here. My points are secret. It's not to share with you. I'll share it as we go. All right. But what I'd like to do is to leave an impact with you, right? And the reason, of course, my topic today is about impact, about the impact of Islamic fintech. That's the topic that I've been given. And at the end of the day, when we just when we focus on presentations, I think it's definitely important and useful. But I believe you've seen many presentations today and yesterday and the day before. So what I want to do is something more interactive, where I want to have more of a dialogue with all of you. And so just now, whether Fatih's question, whether you can ask questions now, I think the answer is you must ask questions. If you don't ask me questions, I don't want to talk so long. All right. So of course I'm joking. I will be here all the way. So feel free to turn on your video as well. I'm trying to look at your videos. There's only 2 or 3 people with their videos on. Feel free to turn it on if it's suitable, right? And we can communicate and interact through chat, right? We can communicate through the Q&A. I think there's a Q&A or the chat. And if possible, maybe the organizers can allow you to unmute your mic also if you have questions. All right. So before we start, of course, I'd like to introduce myself. And while I'm introducing myself, I'd like to know more about all of you. I believe majority are students or postgraduates, some of you. Majority are from Indonesia. I assume mostly from Bogor. So please type out in the chat where you're from and what you're doing. Right? Bogor student should be very common. Please feel free to share. If you're from another country, if you're not a student, also just type. Right? So like for me, I'm gonna type here entrepreneur, how do you spell entrepreneur? Kuala Lumpur. Okay, I spelled it wrongly. Right, entrepreneur Kuala Lumpur. Okay, that's me. And we have from Bangladesh, I believe. So get participating. I need to see like 100 responses, right? There's 143. So 50% respond, maybe 70 is good, right? So Alhamdulillah, we have somebody from Bangladesh, somebody from India. All right, so please type it out. Just keep typing. If you haven't typed it out, please type it so you keep yourself alert. It's at night already now. It's already Maghrib time. So I would like all of you to pay attention and focus, because to me, what's the most important thing about fintech is actually the impact. And that's why I want today's session to be impactful. All right. Now, my name is Umar Munshi. I'm Singaporean. As a quick introduction, I was born in Singapore, grew up in Singapore. And when I was 22, I moved to Indonesia, right? I lived in Indonesia for about 6 years. First year was in Bali, which was quite fun. I was very young back then. It was 20 years ago. Yeah, almost 20 years ago. But after 1 year in Bali, I moved to Jakarta, and I stayed in Jakarta for 5 years. All right, so I used to be able to speak Bahasa Indonesia. Now I'm not so good anymore. Now I'm very confused when I speak Bahasa because I'm living in Malaysia. And when I was living in Singapore, I couldn't speak Malay or Bahasa properly, right? Because my family were all English only. But Alhamdulillah, I went to Indonesia. I spent 6 years there. I came back to Singapore, spent a few years in Singapore. And then I spent a few years, right now I've been in Kuala Lumpur for 5-6 years. All right. Now, my introduction is relevant to all of you and relevant to our topic today. But let me just look at the response. Well, not bad. We have about 20, right? Okay, Alhamdulillah, 20, at least 20 of you are paying attention. Those of you who have not typed in, please type in, right? Your interaction is important, yeah, so that you are part of this session. So one thing I want to highlight is I see here young people, graduates, students, there are entrepreneurs, there are people who are working and so on. And mostly Indonesia, but we have from India, from Bangladesh, and yeah, okay, Indonesia. Right. So for me, I started doing business when I was 18. And when I was 18 years old in Singapore, when everybody was studying. 20 years ago, when I was 18, is different from today. Today, young people do business, it's cool, it's exciting, people support you, right? Most of the time, and maybe not all the time. 20 years ago, when you are supposed to study and you want to do business, nobody likes that. Right? My parents didn't like it, my friends didn't like it, my relatives didn't like it. But I like doing business, and I started when I was 18. Now, how is that relevant to today? Our session today is because when we talk about Islamic fintech, one of the very exciting impact is that it actually allows us to create a lot of new kinds of finance, right? And if we talk about Islamic, it creates new kinds of Islamic finance, new models, new approaches, new products, new solutions. And who comes up with these solutions? Anybody can type out a one-word answer. Who is creating all these new things around us, all this technology, all these apps? Who created Gojek? Who created? Okay, now it's no longer Gojek, right? It's called something else now. Go2, right? Is it Go2 now? Yeah. And who created all these apps and technologies, right? Who are they? Admin staff? Oh, okay, yeah, right. Thank you for the answer. Who? Come on, give me the answer. Innovators, all right? That's important, yeah, innovators. But you can innovate while working. You can innovate while studying, right? What's entrepreneur? Yes, thank you, Tian. So entrepreneurs are the ones who create a lot of new solutions. Of course, they cannot do it alone, right? Now, Islamic fintech, why I'm so excited about Islamic fintech, and the first impact I want to talk about is that it allows us to create new financial tools and solutions for ourselves based on what we need, based on what the people around us need, based on what the world needs. Because finance today, it's outdated, right? Conventional finance today is outdated. Let me tell you a short story about how I started Ethis, why I started Ethis, right? And then I'll come back to the main topic. When I was 26, I was quite successful in Indonesia. I had a business with many different branches and cabang, right? We had office in Jakarta, in Bali, in Makassar, in Surabaya, and Bandung, right? So we had 5 different offices. It was doing very well. I'm not a rich person. My family, we are all teachers. I see 6 siblings, all teachers, parents, all teachers. I'm the only one who's not a teacher. So I started doing business on my own from zero. So I was doing very well, right? I was living in Indonesia. And then within 1 week, the business closed down suddenly and had a lot of problems. Yeah? Basically, the person who was supplying to me took all the money and disappeared. Right? He's from Malaysia. So at the age of 26, my business crashed. I lost everything I had. I had spent 6 years on the business and I had lost everything. And I went back to Singapore and asked my family for help because I had no money. I had a lot of utang, a lot of debt, right? I had a sports car in Singapore. I was so happy I had a sports car. But when you don't have money, the bank takes back your sports car, your cicilan, your installment stops, and you owe the bank a lot of money. So that was something that really affected me. It didn't make me depressed or sad, but I was thinking, what's wrong with finance? Why are the banks acting like this, right? When a young person who is in trouble, why are the banks trying to kill me? Right? That's what happened, right? I was charged very high penalties and all that. So then I was thinking something is wrong here, something's not right. And then Alhamdulillah, the benefit of me losing everything was that I found Islamic finance. Okay, finance first, not fintech. In Singapore, we don't know about Islamic finance, especially 10 years ago, right? Nobody knows what Islamic finance 10 years ago in Singapore. Very, very few people. So I was very excited. I think some of you study Islamic finance, right? How many of you study Islamic finance? Can you put yes? Do you study Islamic finance? Yes, no? Can you type out? So I know how many of you understand the basics. Yes, I think a lot of you take Islamic finance, right? Okay, not all, but a lot of you. So when I found the theory, I was like, oh, mashallah, this is amazing. This is the solution, right? If Islamic finance were in Singapore, I won't face this challenge in my life, you know, or at least there's a better way to do it. And so me and my friends in Singapore started promoting Islamic finance. After 2 years of promoting Islamic finance, trainings, courses, programs, and whatnot, this was in 2012, 2013, 10 years ago. Then we had a community of people who liked Islamic finance and wanted to invest in halal opportunities. But there were no products in Singapore. So we gave theory, but there's nothing you can do after that. So what did we do? The entrepreneurship side in me came out. And I told myself I would create a product for our people in Singapore. Because Muslims in Singapore, those who have cash want to invest, they need to invest. Whoever has cash, you need to invest, right? Because you must grow your money. Inflation is so high. Everybody has to grow your money. In Islam, you're encouraged to grow your money, to invest, to take risks, to participate in the economy, right? Don't keep money and just pay zakat. It's better to spend your money on investment. So in Singapore, that's how Ethis was started. We were started in Singapore in 2014, long time ago, to solve a problem which was to help Singaporeans invest in halal opportunities. Right? So that's the how we started many years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. All right. So what was my first impact? Anybody remember? what's the impact of Islamic finance? I had one main point, but I gave a lot of elaboration. What is it about? What was this impact of Islamic fintech that I was just talking about? We can create new what? New solutions, yeah. New solutions, new products. We can solve our own problems, because finance today, or finance the way it is, or it has been for a long time, is dominated by big, large institutions, especially banks, right? And when Islamic finance came 30 years ago, 35 years ago, sorry, 40 years ago, I remember, in Malaysia, it came in 1983, the year I was born. So 40 years ago, Islamic finance came. And unfortunately, it had to start with, in a sense, following how conventional was, right? Because that's the way the laws were set up, that's the way the environment was, that's what customers were used to. That's what the fund providers and liquidity providers are used to. So that's what happened. And there were some compromises made. And after some time, the Islamic finance industry today, I would say, has progressed very significantly, but is still blocked or limited by what it can do in the traditional model before fintech, because the bank can only do what the bank is allowed to do. Right? But a fintech like Ethis, a fintech that maybe you will create, a fintech that maybe you will work in, inshallah, that fintech can create solutions that can solve real problems. At the same time, fintech can also create a lot more problems, right? Because it's very powerful. Whenever something is powerful and flexible, you can use it for good or you can abuse it for bad, right? In Indonesia, there's a term, is it pinjol? The illegal online money lenders, right? So many online loan sharks today in Indonesia, right? OJK is full-time trying to get rid of them, the illegal ones, right? Why? Because they charge high interest and they make people's lives bad. Yeah, pinjol. What is the singkatan? What's pinjol stand for? Pinjaman online. That's not illegal. Okay, anyway, pinjaman online is fine as long as it's halal and it's legal, right? I don't know what's the illegal word. There's one other term for illegal. Anyway, so fintech can be used for good or for bad, right? Of course, regulators will try their best to protect the public, yeah. But sometimes there are certain things in finance that are considered normal and considered good, right? For example, interest is normal, right? Riba is normal. The riba is the basic unit or basic form of income for banks, right? When you talk about Islamic banks, then they have to find, of course, a different way to do it. But essentially, they have to do a similar thing, which is lend money. When you talk about fintech, that's where the opportunities open up, right? Now, I want to, before I go a bit deeper into this point, which is my second point on impact, the first point, remember, Islamic fintech or fintech in general allows for innovation and entrepreneurship to emerge and create new value, create new solutions. That's number one. All right, don't forget. Number two, right? Number two, I'm going to go into number two. But before I go into number two, I want to hear from you again to make sure all of you are engaged in this conversation. Right? Can you type out some fintechs that you know and you like? Yeah, it can be a pure fintech. It can be a fintech feature inside an app with many things. All right, Alami and Amana, okay. I think you had a session by Alami earlier, right? Before, okay, so Flip, all right. So there's something new. I'm not sure what's Flip. What else? What other fintechs are there that you think are doing good things? Yeah, of course, inshallah, it is. No others? Hey, there are many Islamic fintechs in Indonesia, you know. Yeah, Santara, securities crowdfunding. Yeah, Bank Sharia Indonesia. I guess they have their mobile version and so on. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, iGrow, Shafiq. Yeah, Shafiq security crowdfunding. So we have AFSI, right? Asosiasi Fintech Sharia Indonesia. You can go to AFSI or Sharia Fintech Indonesia. I think I forgot. Sharia Fintech.id. I think I forgot. You can Google it. So my co-founder Ronald is Pak Ronald Yusof is our the president of RC. Right now, back to my point. So when we talk about the impact of Islamic fintech, what is most special about Islamic fintech is that it's Islamic, right? That's what's special. What's special about Islamic finance is that it's supposed to be based on Sharia principles, right? Why is that special and why is that important? Is because Islam has already given us meaning not you and me, us means humanity, right? Islam has given humanity the best possible way to interact commercially, right? To do business, to do finance. It's all there in Islam, from end to end, every single detail. From how we manage our wealth after we die, which is faraid, right? To how the rich help the poor, the really poor, which is zakat, right? To how people do business when one has money and one has effort, then you do a musyarakah. When you have an asset and somebody wants to borrow your asset and use your asset, then you have a lease, right? Or ijara. And so it's all already there. I mean, we can go very deep into this. I'm not an expert, but my point is all the basic fundamentals are already there. But what happened is the world started with conventional for the past 50, 80 years, and that became dominant. And when Islamic finance started, it could not change how things were sufficiently for true Islamic finance, in my view, in my humble view, to really have the impact it needs to have. So the second point I want to share with all of you today is that Islamic fintech, the impact of Islamic fintech is that it can allow for the true spirit and substance of Islamic finance, of muamalat, to be felt and to benefit society. All right? Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, it can allow through Islamic finance and muamalat to reach people, which is something that is very difficult for banks and large institutions to do because of the way they are regulated and the nature of what they're supposed to be doing. But a fintech like Ethis, right? You can go to ethis.co.id, all right? It is a good question on NPF. I will come back to that, inshallah. And feel free as I talk, you have any question, just type it out. All right, later I'll skim through. If I miss any, Fatih will tell me and I'll answer them, right? Okay, so go to ethis.co.id and see what we do. What do we do? Anybody can answer? Who's very fast with your internet and you're checking? Or how many of you already know what we do? What do we do? What's the relationship between the investor and the business on ethis.co.id? Anybody know? Alamak, nobody knows. What is it? It's a joint venture. It's a partnership. What is the Islamic or Arabic term? I mentioned it just now when I was talking. Feel free. There's no wrong answer. Yes, musyarakah. Thank you, Rida. So musyarakah. Musyarakah is a very, very pure way of doing business. Right? Somebody has money, somebody has effort. One puts in money, one puts in the effort, or both put in both. It depends on the transaction, right? And then you share the profit or you share the loss. We both gain or we both benefit. There is no situation where one person benefits and the other loses, because you all are partners, right? That's a musyarakah. And for Ethis, we do mostly musyarakahs, right? If you look at our platform, we do have some murabaha, buying and selling. We have done other models as well in the past, right? But can a bank do musyarakah? It's very tough, maybe impossible, right? So musyarakah is not the only and not the best. There's no such thing as best or not best. Yeah, mudarabah, musyarakah, right? There are some small differences. Both are participatory. That means both sides are participating in the business. Both sides can gain or both sides can lose together, right? Now, There is not, I'm not saying it's the best structure. There's no such thing as best contract or structure. It depends on what you're doing, right? If you are buying and selling, of course, you use a murabaha, right? If you have an asset and you are leasing it to someone to pay rent, then we do a rental structure, right? Ijara. Okay, so my point is, banks, it's very difficult for banks and existing traditional financial institutions to do some of the things that the way it's supposed to be done in Islamic finance. But in fintech, you can, right? In fintech, when you look at the West, because the West, the fintech is very developed, right? Of course, all this very capitalist banking and so on came from the West. Today, the Western people themselves are not happy with it. And they went against the banks, and that's actually sort of how fintech started to grow 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? When PayPal and Gang came out. And what did the West do? We see models in the West today that are successful fintech models that are actually basically Islamic theory, but they don't know it's Islamic, right? They come up with a solution which to them makes a lot of sense and works very well without knowing that the solution was already written by Islam, right? In Islam, long time ago, right? So for example, you have insurtech companies that have modeled the way they do it very similar to takaful, right? If there's any profit, they will distribute it, you know. There are P2P platforms doing revenue sharing, profit sharing. They don't call it musyarakah, right? But to them, it makes sense. Okay. So the West and other countries, including China, are starting to discover new financial models that are fairer to both sides, that are more sustainable because it's fairer, right? And creates more economic benefit because it's fairer, right? And fairness in Islam is adil, right? Adil, right? So, and that's one of the very, very basic fundamentals of Islamic finance. You must be fair in your transaction. That's why riba is haram, because riba is never fair, right? Okay, so that's my second point. What's the second point? The impact of Islamic fintech is that it allows the true impact of Islamic finance to materialize and manifest in this world and bring benefit. All right, you understand the second point? Okay, can somebody type out first and second point? Because I feel, I have this opportunity to speak to all of you young people with energy, with inshallah a bright future, with creativity, digital native. I'm 20 years older. I feel very old now. So I want to, inshallah, at least make sure that whatever I can share that I feel is beneficial for you is something that you really understand, right? Okay, there are other questions about other things. Thank you. I will go into that as well, inshallah, but maybe not too technical, because the question topic today is about the impact of Islamic fintech, right? And not so much on the operation side. Yeah. Okay. So those are the 2 points so far. I'm going to point number 3 now. So far, everybody okay? Anybody got any questions? I'm going to pause first. Anybody got any questions about what I just talked about? Right? Don't go to a different topic. You can ask topics that are not related. I will get back to them later. Okay? But the topic that I just talked about, the 2 points that I just talked about, if you have any questions, please ask. All right? I'll be more than happy to repeat or elaborate until you understand, inshallah. Okay? All right. Now, what's another impact? I have many different types of impacts I can talk about. Right? So I'm just going to keep talking. And then I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes, 20 minutes, inshallah. Fateh, please let me know when the time is up so that we can go through some of the Q&A. Whatever you ask, I'll try to answer, inshallah, to the best of my ability. Right? Now, one impact of Islamic finance, I think this is a very obvious effect, right? A very obvious benefit of Islamic fintech is financial inclusion, right? We hear about that a lot. Right? Nowadays is a very common, popular topic, financial inclusion, sustainability, and so on. What's financial inclusion? Any idea what's financial inclusion? To lower down the rate of unbanked or less banked. That's one way of looking at it. Or those who don't have access to finance. Those that the financial sector does not want to serve or is not able to serve. Right? That's where you have people excluded from finance. And this is a big issue or challenge in Indonesia. Right? I remember when fintech was first coming out, there's this image floating on the internet of somebody on a sampan with an ATM. Right? Because you want to bring the ATM from one island to another island because there's no ATM on that island. Right? It's meant to be a joke, the poster. And financial inclusion is very, very critical for Indonesia and many, many countries today. And how come Islamic fintech or fintech in general can address this is because of the way we are set up. We are flexible, we are nimble, we can adjust, we can suit a certain small group of people. It doesn't need to be for a big group of people. When I was trying to do Islamic finance in Singapore before ETHIS, we spoke to many, many financial service providers to set up in Singapore. But they said, Islamic finance in Singapore, maybe only Muslims will take it, and there are only 700,000 Muslims in Singapore. So nobody wanted to come. But if you do fintech, you can easily do a business from 700,000 people. And if you have a good business, you can expand it to many other places. It's borderless, right? It's not restricted by office or branches. Yeah. So there's the second point. Sorry, point number 3. And this point number 3, also to add on to it, I believe that inshallah Islamic fintech, and I'm assuming here Islamic fintech companies and firms that will follow the spirit and the form of Sharia, not just the form, not just Sharia compliant stamp, which is important, which is the minimum, but also the impact and the outcome. Right? What's the intention and the outcome of the activity, right? Okay, so through Islamic fintech, inshallah, or fintech that's truly Islamic, will also bring benefit for the halal sector. Indonesia has been very aggressive in positioning itself and declaring itself that it wants to be the halal center of the world, right? Halal products, halal food, halal cosmetics, and so on, right? Halal fashion. So Islamic finance must and should go hand in hand with halal products. Halal products should not be taking riba-based loans or financing or other services, right? Because it should be halal 100%. Yeah, so that's one. And sometimes it's difficult to get financing. Yeah, so inshallah, Islamic fintech will help that. Islamic fintech can also and will also, inshallah, help more impactful projects. Like for ETHIS, if you go to our platform today that I shared just now, ethis.co.id, you will see SME UKM financing, right? Short-term financing. But before that, before COVID, we were focused on bringing funds to invest in building houses, low-cost houses in Indonesia. Okay, for those of you who know, there's a program called FLPP, right? Facilitas Liquiditas Perumahan something, I forgot. So there is a program where the government supports the financing of low-cost housing, right? One house is about 100 juta, 200 juta, that kind of price, right? So we brought investors from around the world, small investors, normal people, right? Some put big money, some put small money, to invest in Indonesian projects to build houses for low-income people. Make profit, alhamdulillah, have asset, yes, and create a lot of social good. Help people have a house. Help low-income people, stable income but no house. Now you have a house. Inshallah, your children are more stable, the family is more stable, you have an asset, you don't have problems with your landlord, and so on, right? So alhamdulillah, that's what we did. So this is my other point also related to the third point, where inshallah, Islamic fintech should have an additional focus on doing good, right? Not just doing business, but doing business that is also good. And that is actually very Islamic, right? Islam is all about doing good and spreading good. That's why for ETHIS, our slogan is circulate good. And that's our global slogan. Locally in Indonesia, it's called membangun kebaikan, right? Building good. Okay. All right. So I have covered three, I think, significant points in my view, right? I have other points as well. I think maybe I'll touch on one more point before probably I think we need to go to Q&A soon, right? Depending on your questions. Okay, let me cover two more points. One more impact that I feel is very, very powerful that we have experienced at Ethis is with Islamic fintech, we can actually connect the Muslim world. It's very difficult to connect the Muslim world because the Muslim world has been segregated and divided and broken apart many times, right? And today we are all spread out. We have Muslim regions, but it's very tough, for the Muslim world to transact with each other today. So fintech, we feel and we have seen can help that, right? Islamic fintech can connect the Muslim world, and Alhamdulillah, you'll be surprised. We have been operating in Indonesia for 8 years, initially out of Singapore, and bringing the funds to Indonesia. Right? We only got the OJK full license in October last year, so less than 1 year. For 7+ years, we are operating in a different way from Singapore, and then we got a temporary license from OJK, and now we have the full license from OJK. Right? Like for example, Alami, Amana, Dana Sharia, they all got their license 2 or 3 years ago. Right? We only got it 1 year ago. So anyway, my point is, we have been in Indonesia for a long time. And one thing that we have managed to do that nobody else has done yet, and I hope they will do also, is to bring Muslims from around the world to invest in a country like Indonesia. Because if you compare Indonesia to the rest of the Muslim world, if you talk about emerging economies, although there are challenges, I'm sure you're aware there are challenges locally in your country, but when you compare to other countries, it's actually very attractive for investors. But who's investing in Indonesia? A lot of money from China. A lot of money continues to come from Singapore, Korea, and Australia. Like, where's the Muslim world? Why aren't Muslims investing in the biggest Muslim country in the world? Right? So that's what we have done, Alhamdulillah, to a small, very, very small example. But inshallah, it can become very big as well. Right? And before I go on to the Q&A, I have one last point. And I feel this is a very significant impact of Islamic fintech, is that in today's modern world, a lot of times commercial funds and social funds are separate, right? Commercial is commercial, social is social, right? Muslims have to do both, right? We have to pay zakat or receive zakat, either way, right? And sedekah, all of us give sedekah. Right? But in general, it's separate things, right? You don't think of finance in general, with the way the world looks at it is separate. But for Islamic finance, that's where I feel there is a good opportunity to have great, significant impact by blending or bringing together social and commercial finance. They should not be, they have different purposes, but they should work together. And to me, that is how Islamic fintech can play a very significant role to create better finance for the world, inshallah. All right, so I've covered 5 points. Thank you very much, Rida Rosida, for the summary of the 5th point. And probably I'll pause now. I have more points, but I think inshallah this is quite sufficient for now. And then we can probably jump to some of the questions. I'll just scroll back up. Everybody feel free to ask questions, right? So that I can answer them, inshallah. Wow, so active. I've never seen such an active chat. All right. Pinjol, Amarta. Yeah, Amarta is not Sharia compliant, just so you all know. But I know them, they're good people, inshallah. I hope they become Sharia compliant. But currently they are not. Okay, first question. How does Ethis keep the MPF very low? Oh. All right, important question. And I'll focus on this more on the context of the topic today, right? The impact of Islamic finance. What we tried to do, and Alhamdulillah, initially it was very tough, but nowadays it has a significant impact is when we do the musyarakah, when we do the financing, we actually explain to the borrower, right, or the entrepreneur or the SME that you are doing a partnership here, right? Treat this funder like your partner, not just money you have to pay back. This is your partner. When you do business, any serious business person will take care of his partner, right? And that is the amanah that's very important. And that is part of the reason, not the main reason maybe, but part of the reason, I believe, inshallah, why our MPF is low, because we talk to these people who are getting the funding and make them understand, or try to make them understand, the relationship and the amanah between you and your investor, right? Who is your partner? Yeah. Of course, there's all the other things that maybe I won't explain so much. We have all the credit screening, pulling out all the data, the structuring, the collection, blah, 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 right? These are all technical stuff. I don't think I want to go into that today. But that's basically what we do. Yeah. And from the Islamic perspective, I think that component of amanah and relationship is very, very powerful, right? If, of course, we also have some non-Muslim businesses, right? Majority are Muslim so far, but we don't exclude non-Muslim, right? So non-Muslim also can come to us and raise funds. So for them, we explain it, of course, without, they understand as well, alhamdulillah, right? Okay, thank you for the question. Let's see. Comment about financial risk management in Islamic financing since only salam is allowed. All right, I think it's too technical. I will not answer this question, but thank you for asking. Probably you can ask some of your lecturers. Not so relevant to our topic today, I believe. Low financial literacy. Okay, so I'm going on to this question here. I'll read it out so you all can also follow. It's true that fintech accelerates financial inclusion, but we are hampered by low financial literacy, right? When consumers have access but lack literacy, they will be fooled by illegal applications, okay? So fintech only reaches some people. What about those who are older? Okay, good, very good questions. Is this from a lecturer? All right. So financial literacy is a huge topic. And again, the issue here is about, that was highlighted here, is about using illegal or unethical platforms or fintechs, right? So Islamic fintech can solve that if it's true to the Islamic spirit, because the product and the solution and the service will be a fair one, right? Will be a good one. It's not meant to take advantage of people, right? So that's where Islamic fintech can solve financial inclusion, because it's not, its products are not crafted or created in a way to take advantage. Yeah. So I think that's my point, right? Islamic fintech must have ethics, and the difference between normal, I guess a standard traditional ethics and Islamic ethics is the world today. The ethics keeps changing all the time, but for Islam, our basics remain the same, right? In Singapore, it's changed so much in the past 20 years, from the time I was a teenager there. What's ethical and what's not. Last time you go to the beach, you only see families. Today you go to the beach, you see bikinis, right? So the world has changed, ethics change. But for Islamic finance, Islam, the basics of Islam don't change. The context changes, the way it's applied changes, and so on, right? So Islamic fintech will prevent this. Even without good financial literacy, it will not exploit people. But with financial literacy, it will be even better, of course, right? And in Islam, we know knowledge is very, very important. Yeah, thank you for that. Another question from the same person is, how about older people? And how can fintech help older people? I think this is an interesting question. There's definitely a digital divide, right? I think maybe it's not so much on age anymore, because I know a lot of I can see everywhere older people stuck to their phones and playing games or doing complex things on their phones, right? So if it's mobile in general, I think the digital divide is not so high. But if you talk about exposure and region, let's say you go to the rural area, you go to the kampong, to the daerah, maybe, right? Maybe the older people have less access to fintech. So at the end of the day, it's about how simple and easy it is for everybody to use. And not all fintech products are suitable for every consumer group. Yeah. Fatih, am I okay? Should I continue?
Yeah, of course. Maybe 3 another minutes, huh?
How many minutes?
3.
3 minutes, okay. So 3 minutes means I don't have much time. I think commercial and social finance. Okay. All right. I think a lot of questions are about how do we avoid failed business or losses. All right. Now, again, I cannot go into detail today on how we do it because it's technical, right? And we have to go through a diagram and so on how we structure it and what are the risk mitigants. Yeah. But you can see from our platform the information, and that information will help you to understand what's the risk involved. Okay. The thing is, and this is a very, very significant point in my view, is a bit difficult for a lot of people to accept. But for all of you young people, I hope you all can accept. In Islam, in my view, we must take risk and we must be able to lose what you're investing. If you cannot afford to lose what you're investing, then you should not be an investor. All right? The good thing is the minimum is very, very low. So, you know, some of you, I'm sure, can afford the minimum, right? And if you lose the minimum, you are not going to get in trouble. Your family is not going to be in trouble. You're not going to be homeless, right? Because it's small. So if you can take the risk of losing money, then invest. Because in Islam, investment must have risk. And that is why investment is encouraged. Because when we invest and take risk, we are actually creating value, right? We're helping others who are at a riskier situation than us. However, we cannot just keep, throwing money anyhow, right? There's a saying, or I'm not sure whether it's a hadith, but in olden times, before you leave your camel, tie your camel, right? You have to tie first. If you don't tie and then you come back, the camel is not there, then it's your fault, right? Allah tells you need to use your brains, right? So definitely look through, understand, evaluate, and then decide how much you can invest. Even though, alhamdulillah, our MPF, non-performing financing, is very low, is 0.15%, right? 99.85% successful. With some delays, it's okay, it's still considered successful. But when you enter an investment, the mindset should be you want to take the risk so you can get the reward. Then there's barakah in that transaction, inshallah. All right, so I hope this has been useful for all of you. One last thing before I end. So that's my name. I think you can see it as well in the posters. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I know in Indonesia, not everybody actively uses LinkedIn, but I believe it's a very powerful tool. And in my view, is the only useful social media. All the rest are filled with nonsense. And on LinkedIn, you can find work, you can do business, you can do a lot of things. Alhamdulillah, I've learned a lot I've benefited a lot from LinkedIn. So I hope to connect with all of you online, inshallah. And feel free to reach out to me also on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attention. And I hope my sharing today has brought some benefit, inshallah. Please make dua for me and for Ethis and support us in our effort to spread Islamic fintech, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much from Mr. Umar for the interactive insight about the Islamic fintech and its impact on the society. We are very, very fortunate to have listened to your presentation today. May Allah bless you. Okay, now before we really close this lecture session, I'll give another chance for anyone who wants to ask something to our great lecturer here. You could either raise your hand via the feature in Zoom or left the question via the chat room.
Are there more questions?
Now we got someone raise their hand. So
I'm good. We'll continue if you are fine with it.
Rosida, for the host, please unmute Mr. Rosida so he could ask to the lecturer directly.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Rida. Thank you for the very inspiring lecture, Prof. Okay, actually, I have typed the question on the chat. It's on, okay, kindly please, Mr. Munshi, would you like to comment on the banking and fintech are the rivals to each other? So do you think it's right? And then the second one is, do you think Islamic fintech could be a good partner to be, I mean, for the mainstream Islamic banks? Okay, that's 2 questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I guess very important point first of all is what's the definition of fintech, right? So I mean, you have digital banks also who are also considered fintech. There are a lot of fintech solution providers who provide solutions to banks, right? So fintech and banking is it's overlapping, right? But maybe you're talking about non-bank fintech and banking and banks, right? Okay, so I'll approach it in that angle. Non-bank fintechs and banks, should they, how can they work and should they work together, especially for Islamic fintech, right? In my view, or not only in my view, based on how fintech has progressed in more mature countries and even in Indonesia, it's all about collaboration. There are, of course, cases where fintech will directly compete with the bank and disturb the bank's business in the sense of disrupt the bank. There are cases of that, but in most of the applications and most of the time, it is a win-win relationship, right? And my view is banks, Islamic banks must definitely work closely. Somebody unmuted accidentally. Yeah, so Islamic banks definitely must and should do a lot more collaboration with fintechs, because fintechs can do things that they cannot do or they don't want to do, right? So for Etis, alhamdulillah, we've already partnered with a number of fintechs, from BPRS fintech banks to rural banks to commercial banks, but we definitely want to do a lot more. But to answer your question, definitely they should, because Islamic banks, alhamdulillah, I see a number of Islamic banks starting to do so. And even if you don't talk about Islamic, you talk about the West and China, banks and fintechs are very, very close and do a lot of things together. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Munshi.
Okay, thank you for the great answer for Mr. Umar and the great questions as well from Ms. Rosida. Is there any question left?
All right, so I guess there's no question. So thank you, everybody. And again, I just want to recap. I mean, I'm not trying to do advertising here, but for you to understand the impact of fintech, Islamic fintech, you have to get involved. If you're not yet ready to be an investor, no problem, right? But at least sign up. You know, go and look for go to the AFC website, sign up for everybody's email list, so you get updates on what's happening for Etis, for Alami, for Amana, and all the others, inshallah. All right, thank you very much, and all the best. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for your answer to all the questions, Umar. I hope your answers will answer them correctly, and they were very insightful for us. And I would like to ask you to stay on your screen, because Umar, as we have a small token of our appreciation, we would like to show you our sincere thanks as a certificate. For the host, please show us the certificate. Okay, now this is the certificate for you, sir, for the great lecture you told us just now. Sir, it's not much, but please accept it as our gratitude. And now we're going to take a picture of us joining this lecture. And now please give me your best pose. I hope our host is ready for taking the picture of us. Okay, I will count to three. I will count from 3 to 1, so we can give our best pose, maybe. Okay, now for the first slide, 3, 2, 1. Okay, for the next slide, the second one, 3, 2, 1. The third one, 3, 2, 1. For the fourth slide, 3, 2, 1. For the last one, 3, 2, 1. Yep. Okay. I think that's all for today. But before we close all of our agenda, I'm sorry. Is there anything else you would like to say, Mr. Umar, about the assignment or quiz, or maybe a closing statement? I'm sorry, sir. You're still muted. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was not allowed to unmute just now. Yeah. No, I think I already covered whatever I wanted to share. Alhamdulillah, and thank you everybody.
Okay. You're welcome, sir. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, the first series of lecture of event has come to an end. We would like to express our gratitude to all our distinguished lecturers today, as like Mr. Dima Jani and Mr. Umar Munshi, who have shared their valuable time, knowledge, and wisdom on today's lecture. We would also like to express our gratitude to all the participants who have attended our lectures today until the end. May Allah bless us all for all activities today. Also, we would like to ask you for forgiveness, as you may have felt many inconveniences throughout all the session. And before we close, I would like to remind all the participants that tomorrow agenda will start at the same time as today at 4 o'clock in the evening in Western time, in Western Indonesia time. And we would like also remind of the participants about the assignments, pretest, and post-test. And please kindly check your account at the website ocw.ipb.ac.id using your username and password. Wallahu a'lam. Let's close our agenda today by saying Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Doa kifarah majelis. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.